Good morning, everyone. I'm Richard Parr, and you are watching Sportuccino. Yes, this isn't our usual set for Sportuccino. We've actually had a few internet problems at the headquarters, so I've had to rush back home to the home office. But fortunately, I am here and I am ready to talk all things sport with you on Periscope, Facebook, YouTube, and crucially at sportuccino.com. We're going to look ahead to a massive weekend in the English Premier League. In particular, we're going to look at Liverpool versus Arsenal. Joining me on the programme shortly will be the BT Sport European football commentator Sebastian Hutchinson. Lots to discuss and digest with him this morning. If you've got any questions for him, get involved in the Facebook page and on Periscope. We would love to hear from you. All right, let's begin the day with our morning sports headlines. Fernando Torres is in a stable condition after he suffered a head injury in Atletico Madrid's draw with Deportivo. Andy Murray's into the Dubai semi-finals after beating Philippe Kohlschreiber. Rory McIlroy suffered from food poisoning during his first round of the WGC in Mexico. And Andrew Bogut joins the Cleveland Cavaliers. So those are our sports headlines this morning. And before we talk more about sport, I want to tell you about the people who created our amazing Sportuccino logo. It was 99 designs. We were really pleased with what they did, and their service is offered to talented freelancers around the world. And by designing our logo, you get to work with them and you decide which freelancers you like to work with, which designs you like, and then you get to decide how it can be improved, what needs to change, what needs to be done better. And if you're not completely happy with their service, they will offer you your money back. So it's a money back guarantee with 99 designs, and it can be anything from websites to business cards to logos. Go and check out their service. There's a link to it on our resources page at sportuccino.com. I'll also put a link to it on this Facebook video and on YouTube. It's so good to talk to you this morning all about sport, and we want to look ahead to a huge weekend in the English Premier League. And as I mentioned, I've got the BT Sport football commentator Sebastian Hutchinson joining me now live on Sportuccino. Good morning to you, Sebastian.
Good morning.
So Arsenal against Liverpool, two teams who are getting very good at scoring goals, but not so good at keeping them out. Are we expecting another high-scoring game this weekend, Sebastian?
Well, as we know, this is a fixture traditionally that has a lot of goals in it. But for Liverpool and Arsenal, 2017 has been difficult to say the least. You really have to say that. Liverpool, we know their struggles recently, and we know Arsenal's struggles. But I just get the feeling that who knows? This might end up 0-0. I know it's a ridiculous thing to say.
Yeah, we've seen 3-3.
I should guess stuff like that, but just to be cautious, these two sides will just want to get themselves back on track. Arsenal haven't played since the 12th of February, I believe. So it's been a long gap in the Premier League for them. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, Liverpool played earlier this week.
Albeit Liverpool had a 2-week break, Sebastian, and it didn't do very well for them, did it?
No, I think teams speak a lot about having breaks and how good they are for players' freshness and everything else. But a lot of Arsenal fans, for example, criticised the fact that Mesut Ozil had a lot of time off in the winter, and it came out that he had some back problems and this and that. But maybe we overplay how much a break really adds to sides and how much it gives to players, because really they talk a lot in football about momentum and continuing to play. If you're in form, you want to play as soon as possible and you want to get on with it. When you're out of form, maybe that's when you want the break. It might help Arsenal, and we know Bayern aside, they have won their last two games. Let's put that into perspective. But it's all about perception, how the team is playing at the time, and obviously results.
Now, had Arsenal had got a better result against Bayern, you might have expected them to put out a slightly weaker team potentially against Liverpool, resting players, but we're going to see a full-strength side, aren't we, against Liverpool on Saturday?
I don't think Wenger would ever say he'd rest players in the Premier League at any point, because Arsenal over the last, for as long as I can remember. They've always had something to play for in the business end of the season. So they've never really been in a position to rest players in the Premier League. So I think even if they had a chance of turning around the result against Bayern, I still think it would have been a full-strength side. I mean, they're playing Liverpool, so there's no way that they're going to put out a weakened side at all. And even against Sutton, Alexis Sanchez still got on the pitch in the second half. So he's a player who will want to play in every game going. So I don't really think there's any chance of Arsenal resting players. And they've got a big squad. They've got one of the biggest squads in the Premier League with a lot of depth to it. The quality level perhaps isn't as high as Arsenal fans would like, but they do have competitiveness in that team. And it's often hard to pick the first choice 11 at the moment. You've got somebody like Giroud, for example, who's got the best goals per minute ratio in the Premier League, but he's barely started for Arsenal this season. Not playing, but yet he's an international. You've got internationals on the bench. Xhaka's not played a lot this season. You've got players like Lucas Perez, there's been grumblings about the fact he's not played enough. So there were players like Theo Walcott played against Sutton. So it's hard to judge what is a weakened team for Arsenal as such, but I doubt they'll play one against Liverpool, that's for sure.
Alex Iwobi's played a lot this season, Sebastian. I've heard a few things that some people don't rate him. What have you made of him this season?
It's a bit unfair to say that, really, because he's a young player who's, I think, in the modern age in the Premier League, done very well just to get into the first 11 of a top club. And the fact he's started more often than not, you have to give him a lot of credit. And when a young player gets brought into the team, you have to imagine, even if they make a brilliant start, that at some point their level will level with drop, because experience gives you consistency of performance. And when you're inexperienced, you're going to have some lows. So obviously against Bayern, he's playing against some of the best players in the world, and obviously he wasn't going to have the best game in the world. And you sometimes have to judge it. Do you give more criticism to players who have that experience, say like Gibbs, compared to an Iwobi, and just give him the opportunity? Now, the counter-argument is, Arsenal are desperate for points now. They're a big club. They shouldn't be having players playing who are trying to learn the ropes, say, who are out of form. So maybe Wenger should perhaps just keep Iwobi out of the team for a little bit and then bring him back in again. But it's not for me to tell Arsene Wenger how to deal with young players. And he gives a lot of faith in his players, perhaps too much faith, perhaps. But he does give a lot of faith to his players. So I imagine that Iwobi, even if he's slightly out of form, Wenger would still play him. And he has got something to offer to the side. He's a very slick passer of the ball. He's decent in possession. And he works hard to track back, which perhaps in that left midfield, left winger position, Arsenal have struggled to have somebody to track back and help out, which is often why Wenger brings on a second left back in games when he's trying to defend a lead.
Do we expect Wenger to still be there next season, Seb?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting. I think Arsenal will probably want to clarify his future, but there is a massive argument to say you've got to wait till the end of the season, because if Arsenal don't finish in the top four, then there's there's something to hang over Wenger's head, really, because he's been so consistent with Arsenal. Never mind the fact Arsenal haven't quite been able to compete with the best sides, and a lot of fans say they should do. They still have maintained a consistency, which for the owners of the club is the most important thing, really, because that's what they're putting their money in, guarantee of return. It's a terrible thing to say, and you lose the fantasy of football, but from an owner's point of view, you would love Arsene Wenger to be the manager of the club. So at the end of the day, they will want him to stay. But if he doesn't finish in the top four and that money pot is gone, then maybe there'll be some consideration. And from Wenger's point of view, if he really feels like his side aren't going to finish in the top four and the season's over, he may be tempted by offers from perhaps PSG and, of course, Barcelona.
Yeah, Barcelona would be an incredible job to take over for a little while. Almost guaranteed trophies there of some sort. So when you're talking about finishing in the top four, Seb, are we effectively saying here that this game, because of Manchester United starting to push up the league, that potentially the loser of Saturday's game could miss out on the top four?
I think defeat would probably harm Liverpool more than Arsenal, just based on the tradition of Arsenal making a strong finish and finishing in the top four. But Liverpool, this is a difficult period for Jurgen Klopp, really, because they've got a lot of the same problems that Arsenal have. You perhaps say they've got a few very, very good performers, perhaps not the level and quality of player that, say, Manchester City or Manchester United have. So if they have an off day or they come up against a very good side and they tend to lose the game. Now, a lot of Liverpool fans have a lot of positivity about Jurgen Klopp because he's at the beginning of his career. But you just wonder the parallels between themselves and Arsenal is interesting. But they haven't been through this situation, Liverpool, of wanting to get into the top four, then putting together a very consistent run. They've either been in recent years battling for the title and just missing out, or just being out of the top four altogether. So I think there's more pressure. There's definitely more pressure on Liverpool, I have to say, because I think Arsenal, in many regards, have been written off by the media anyway. But there's been a lot of positivity about Liverpool and the belief that they're going places with Jurgen Klopp. And games like this are a real test of that. Now, I know I said it's going to be goalless, but it's an impossible game to predict because it could literally go either way. And I know that's a bit of a cliche to say, but with this game, you could picture Liverpool winning 3-0 and you could picture Arsenal winning 3-0 just based on the form of the two sides. So I think defeat will harm Liverpool much more than Arsenal.
Oh, very interesting. What do you make about Liverpool going forward right now? A bit of criticism recently about Daniel Sturridge. Firmino's not been in quite as good form. Origi's been injured as well. Do they need to strengthen that position in the summer, do you think?
I find it hard to criticise Daniel Sturridge because he just never gets that run of games that a striker needs. Now, I know we spoke about Giroud coming off the bench and making an impact, but Giroud's genuinely had a good record with injuries, whereas Sturridge is a real problem. So I find it hard to criticise him per se. And I remember Firmino seeing him in the Bundesliga, and I always got the feeling he was the sort of player that, say, Liverpool or Arsenal would buy because he was never going to be bought by the elite clubs at the moment. He's a very, very good player. But if you're asking him to be your driving force and to take you, into a title race or something like that, I'm not too sure about that. I really am not too sure about that. But criticism of Liverpool, I think their bigger problem is defensively, because when teams have a go at Liverpool, much like Arsenal, I keep saying the similarities, but when they have a go at Liverpool, they find a lot of success, which you can't say against Chelsea. That's the markup really. In the Premier League in general, Chelsea's standard has been the fact that they've been very difficult to break down since they've been on this long run, and that's the difference. If you have a good defence, then you go in places, put it that way.
Yeah, well, with Liverpool playing Lucas Leiva in defence at the moment, it's not been the greatest choice of centre-back pairings for them.
No, Lucas, I have to say, he's been there a while now.
Yeah, I think that the thought is that Mascherano was made into a great defender at Barcelona, and they thought they could do the same with Lucas Leiva, and I don't think it's quite worked out the same. Plus, with all the greatest respect to Liverpool, he doesn't have the same type of players around him as Mascherano has at Barcelona. But let's move on to some of the other games this weekend. And Manchester United, they're in really good form at the moment. Of course, win the EFL Cup in that thrilling finale against Southampton. I'm looking at their last 5 games. Of course, they've won the last 5. They face a Bournemouth side which have lost their last 4 games. If you're a betting man, Seb, there's only one way to put your money, isn't there?
Yeah, I think Manchester United, they are the informed team in England, but, they're still 6th in the table. It's just one of those interesting situations. It's all about the run you're on and the form you're on and perception. So obviously you'd say Arsenal and Liverpool are getting a lot of criticism, yet they're still above Manchester United in the table. Now, of course, that might change tomorrow, and it probably will change lunchtime because it's the lunchtime kickoff. So a United win would move them above those sides, but it's all about perception. But you just get the feeling that Manchester United fans are very happy at the moment. They're on a nice run. The cup aside, in the league, I think that if they avoid defeat tomorrow, it'll be 17 games unbeaten, which is a very tasty run, that. And really, their side in form, they've got a striker who's in form. Every time I see them play, they always create chances. They've had a problem of maybe putting teams to the sword, perhaps, and just feel there's going to be a moment where they really, hand it to one of the sides in the Premier League, 5-0. It might be tomorrow, lunchtime. You just feel all the confidence flowing through United at the moment suggests they'll almost certainly win tomorrow. But you just feel that they're the side on form, and looking at that top four race, it's really difficult to predict. But you just get the feeling that United and Mourinho are they're getting into gear now, and they'll almost be fancying their chances of finishing the top four. That's for sure.
So I probably should get Zlatan back into my fantasy Premier League team, is what you're saying, Seb.
It's too late. It's too late. People have transferred Mane in, for example, before he made an impressive return back into the side. But you have to get it, as the form's going up the mountain rather than down. And at the moment, Zlatan's right at the top, and people always wax lyrical about Zlatan, but it is an incredible achievement that at his age he's still competing at the top level, causing damage to defences, and he's scoring goals for Man United, and he's winning them games, and he's getting them points where you think, oh, this game might be going away from them. And it's just that difference maker that really helps teams, and is perhaps, going back to Liverpool and Arsenal, has harmed them in the past. That sometimes if you just got that high quality player in form, he can win you games 1-0, as we've seen with Chelsea and Costa and Hazard. He'll just get you those points. And as for Bournemouth, I think, again, it's difficult because for Eddie Howe, there's a lot of good favour towards him. But in 2017, there's no doubt about it, they are struggling. But you always have to put it in context, because are Bournemouth aside anyone would have ever expected to be in the Premier League, say, 10 years ago? It's an incredible achievement when you've got clubs like Newcastle and Leeds in the Championship. What he's performed, is very impressive. The counter argument is that every side has got money now, and it's a level platform for the smaller clubs anyway. So regardless of whether you consider a club a big club or they've got a small stadium or whatever, everyone's got that pool of money, and everyone has the potential to bring in top players. Bournemouth's financial wealth is probably more than someone like Ajax, for example. They might not be able to attract the players with the name, but finance goes a long way, as we've seen with China. So, I think start to criticise Bournemouth will become more and more fair as the weeks go on, regardless of how well a job that Eddie Howe's done.
Yeah, it's crazy, the money in the English Premier League. Speaking about money, and you were talking about Zlatan there, he's just playing coy with them. He's going to be there next season, isn't he? He's just trying to get United to pay a little bit more money for their next contract, surely, Seb?
Yeah, I think with someone like Zlatan Ibrahimovic, I'd probably say, you say this a lot about footballers, but I don't think from his point of view, just say he got an offer from China or the States, I think he enjoys being in the limelight, people talking about him and proving people wrong as well. And it's, his record of going to different clubs and winning trophies is almost unrivaled. And all of this coy, playing the club and contract talks and everything else is part of the whole deal, because his worth is growing every week, and he's got a very experienced agent, as we know. They will play the right time. They know they know the cards they can put on the table with Manchester United. And from Man United's point of view, I think it's hard at the moment to go out and buy a guarantee of success in a player. The competition is huge. Who are you going to buy that's going to replace Zlatan's goals, who you're going to be able to get for the same money that you pay him on a contract? That's the difference. You might spend 40 million on Lacazette, say. Is he going to get the same number of goals as Zlatan? And that's 40 million transfer fee plus, signing on fees, wages, etc. Zlatan, you're paying out a big signing on fee, you're paying out big wages, you don't have that transfer fee. I think it's the money factor. I think United would love him to sign on. It's just a matter of adding a few extra zeros, I suppose.
And Sunday's big game is between Tottenham and Everton. Everton are on a really good run right now. A lot of people are billing this as the battle between the strikers, Harry Kane and Romelu Lukaku. Got some stats here. Both have scored 17 goals this season. Both have 4 assists, and they both have shots on target of around about 62 and 64% respectively, both with fantastic records. If you were to have one player in your team, Seb, who would it be?
That's an unfair question to ask. I think if I was a team lower down the table, I prefer to have Lukaku as an outlet. But if I was a bigger side, I'd probably want Harry Kane. I think if I was a club like Bayern Munich, I could see Harry Kane playing for Bayern because he's a clever striker. He runs the lines very hard. He's a good finisher. He works very hard. I could see his way of playing football fitting into the ethos of Bayern Munich. Now, I'm not saying to Tottenham fans that you're going to sell him to Bayern, but just trying to put it into perspective. Whereas someone like Lukaku, perhaps, you'd love him. He's a hard worker as well. And you'd love him running the lines and putting pressure on defences. And I think I'd prefer to have Lukaku if I was a smaller team, but Kane at a big team. But I'd want either of them. I mean, someone like Lukaku is what Arsenal probably needed a while ago. Just a real target man up front that offers a lot more, a bit more speed than Giroud, perhaps. And you look at Lukaku and you think he's got everything to be a striker, and he deserves his chance at top club. And Chelsea probably let him go too quickly, perhaps. And I really rate him. I mean, people see a lot of holes in his game, but I think he's a brilliant player. And you've got to remember, he has been performing at a level since he was, 16 years old. So in some respect, we know Harry Kane's a young striker, but, Lukaku's been doing it longer. As far as Sunday is concerned, I think it's not going to be so much a battle of the strikers. I think Spurs, for example, their European form has been extremely disappointing. We know that, but somehow they managed to. Their poor runs, do not last that long, and we saw them respond well against Stoke. And we'll see on Sunday. It's going to be a really good game, this, because I've seen Everton play a few times, and I've liked what I've seen.
We'll have to see what happens there. Seb, it's been really good to talk to you this morning on Sportuccino. Just before you go, why don't you tell us how we can continue to get this great knowledge online through your social media channels, and also anything else you'd like to promote, please, this morning?
No, you can speak to me on Twitter on Seb_Hutch. But this weekend, I'm doing Benfica's trip to Firenze in the Portuguese top flight. So I do a lot of European football on BT Sport. And there's a really good title race shaping up in Portugal. Benfica are a point clear of Porto. I know we mention the same teams all the time in Portugal, but Sporting are really struggling at the moment. But it's a really good league because you get to see the talents that go on to become superstars in the world game. And some of the players that Benfica have let go is incredible. Even in the January transfer window, they sold Gonçalo Guedes to PSG. They sold Renato Sanchez to Bayern Munich. They're always selling players at a high cost, even squad players like Helder Costa to Wolves. So it's a good league to watch. Don't write it off. And then the other big game this weekend is Roma against Napoli. You won't want to miss that in Serie A, because that's two of the best attacking teams in Europe at the moment.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Porto face Benfica. Well, Benfica versus Porto. I'm going there in a few weeks. I think it's April the 2nd to see that game. That'll be thrilling. And of course, Edin Dzeko in fantastic form right now for Roma. Well, Seb, it's been so good to talk to you this morning. Thank you so much for being on Sportuccino.
No problem at all. Thank you.
Great to talk to Seb this morning. What did you make of all of his opinions and predictions for this weekend's Premier League action? Let us know on the Facebook page and on Periscope. We would love to hear from you, love to get your thoughts. Now, this Sunday, it is the WWE pay-per-view Fastlane. It's a Raw-only pay-per-view. It's the final one before WrestleMania, a huge main event between Goldberg and Kevin Owens. It's on the WWE Network. And on Thursday, Sportuccino, we previewed the whole pay-per-view with the wrestling journalist from the Sports Bible, Josh Lawless. And Josh was talking about at one stage about the women's title match between Charlotte and the reigning champion, Bayley. He gave us his prediction. Why don't we have a quick reminder of what Josh had to say?
Previously on Sportuccino.
Charlotte will reclaim her title again and maintain that impressive unbeaten run at pay-per-views. It was slightly surprising for me to see Bayley win the title a couple of weeks back on Raw. I think with her and the character that she is, you need a long build, similar to what it was like in NXT, where she failed multiple times and eventually dug deep and managed to capture the big one. That should have been the story on the main roster for her, but it's been a bit premature in her winning the title. So I think Charlotte will be the victor here, and I think the way it's going to go down, I think Sasha Banks, who's fighting Nia Jax earlier on in the night, I think she's going to turn heel on Bayley, sort of rekindle that rivalry in NXT. And for WrestleMania, I think it'll be a fatal four-way between Charlotte, the champion, Sasha, Bayley, and Nia Jax, and it should be a good showcase for women's wrestling and what's going on the Raw brand.
Yes, go back and see that full interview with Josh at sportuccino.com. It's also on our YouTube page as well. Go and check that out. Just search Sportuccino. Now, we do have some amazing guests every single morning, and some of them give some really strong opinions, and so do I when it comes to sport, because we love sport. We are passionate about sport. Sometimes our tempers flare, but we know we are talking about something that we really, really care about, and we hope you do too. And in fact, I've put together a little best bits clip of some of the times of when we take things really, really to the next level of passion. Why don't you have a little look at this? I think it's an absolutely ridiculous decision.
This Leicester team are in relegation trouble at the moment. Serious problems they've got.
Oh, they're a mess, Scotland.
I just think it's mental from fans to bring firecrackers in the first place. It's not a freaking bonfire night. It's not the 4th of July. Grow up.
Clattenburg is the best referee in the world.
That Tony Bellew nonsense.
I don't blame him for doing what he did. I don't blame him for disobeying team orders.
I think it's madness.
Rooney is the more natural-born leader.
The performance wasn't really good enough from PSG.
Both teams have to win just to kind of get a little bit of pride back.
I don't think Jansen's up to it.
It's the same North London, bottling attitude.
They looked like a side who would concede goals. Now they don't.
Grow up, people. Grow up. Pathetic. Just a little bit of fun there to end today's Sportuccino. And just before we go, let's get one more reminder of today's sports headlines. Fernando Torres is in a stable condition and conscious after suffering a head injury in Atletico Madrid's draw with Deportivo. Andy Murray's through to the Dubai Championship semi-finals after beating Philip Kohlschreiber. Rory McIlroy suffered food poisoning in his first round at the WGC in Mexico. And Andrew Bogut joins the Cleveland Cavaliers. Alright, that's it for today's Sportuccino. If you've liked this episode, please like it, comment and share it. Tell your friends about Sportuccino. Like the Facebook page. Subscribe to us on YouTube. If you're listening to this on iTunes, press that subscribe button and give us a rating and review. We'll be back at the office on Monday morning, and this temporary bookshelf nonsense again. We will be back where there's fully functional internet, broadcasting Sportuccino live as we do every single weekday morning. I can't wait for it. Have a wonderful sporting weekend, and I'll speak to you again on Monday. I've been Richard Parr. You've been watching Sportuccino. Goodbye.